Apologies for the delay. Sir. Here's your coffee. Kristen had just started talking when the cup slipped from her hand and fell to the floor. What on earth is wrong with you? You're out of your mind. Can't you see that someone is seated here? Yoda, a passenger, had become a victim of the coffee spill. Instead of providing him with a tissue to clean himself, Kristen stood there paralyzed, unable to believe what had just happened. This can't be true. Kristen. He must be dreaming, she muttered to herself. Meanwhile, her fellow attendant Cassandra stepped in. Please accept my apologies on behalf of my colleagues, or I'll clean it right away. She turned to face the passenger in the window seat. Mr. Moss, saying, I'll go grab you some coffee right now. Come with me. Kristen. Once again. I apologize for the inconvenience, she repeated with a smile before departing. Cassandra swiftly prepared the coffee and cleaned up the spilled mess. Throwing the trash into a plastic bag, she glared angrily at Kristen, saying, See. This is why I warned you not to come back to work so soon. Chris. You need a rest. You're not ready to work. Kristen, opening her locket to display a photograph, muttered. Just tell me one thing. Cassandra. It's called Mr. Moss, didn't you notice? Doesn't he look like my late husband? Life is quite unexpected. Chris. Cassandra had only begun to speak when she glanced at the photo. Oh my gosh, she gasped, covering her mouth in shock. That man looks just like your husband. But how's that possible? I know. Right. That's what I'm thinking. Kristen replied quietly, wondering who the man resembling her husband was. Almost 3 months ago, she had lost her husband Bob to a heart attack. They were happily married for 10 years. And it was only a few years ago that Bob had requested her to quit her job so she could spend more time with him. Babe. You've been there for both of us for so long. And that's enough. I want you to take a break and devote your time to the house and us. Kristen enjoyed her profession, but she was never really enamored with it. She had been working only because she was the breadwinner for her family while Bob was attempting to start his business after 6 years. When Bob's business had been thriving, she decided to quit her job and spend more time with him. Everything was going smoothly until Bob unexpectedly suffered a heart attack and died. Kristen was plunged into despair after his death. Alone and childless, she refused to accept her new reality and practically isolated herself from the rest of the world. As time passed, she realized she couldn't go on like this. One day, as she looked at herself in the mirror, she barely recognized the person staring back at her. She had been reduced from a cheerful young woman to a frail figure who appeared much older than her age, deprived of care and love. At that point, she decided to return to her job and start afresh. However, she never expected that exactly 3 months after bidding farewell to her husband, she would run into a man at work who would bring back painful memories of losing her beloved better half. Chris. Can't you hear me? Cassandra shook her, interrupting her thoughts. He wants to talk to you. Uh-huh. Who wants to talk to me? She asked, bewildered. Mr. Moss. His full name is Stephen Moss. He just told me he wants to talk to you, Cassandra explained. But Kristen didn't understand what was going on. She took a deep breath and steadied herself before approaching Stephen. Yes. Sir. How may I assist you? She asked, forcing a smile on her face. Oh. I just wanted to make sure you're okay. I sensed you were tense. Is everything all right? Stephen inquired. Thank you for your concern, sir. Kristen replied. I'm all good. Is there anything else I can do for you? Oh no, that's all right. By the way, he added. He rummaged through his wallet. This is my business card. I'm afraid I ruined your dress, he remarked, pointing to her coffee-stained skirt. My secretary will reimburse you. I apologize once more. Oh. Sir. That's fine. You don't have to. Kristen began. Please. I insist. Mr. Moss said. Thank you. Sir, she said as she accepted the business card. I really appreciate it. Have a nice day, she added as she walked away, however. That night at home, she couldn't stop thinking about Stephen. Every time she tried to sleep, her mind returned to him. Did Bob have a brother he was unaware of? Was that possible? Perhaps Mrs. Fisher would know. She pondered, and decided to speak with her mother-in-law the next day, when she arrived at her mother-in-law's house. The older woman greeted her at the door. Kristen. Is everything all right? I'm sorry for disturbing you so early in the morning, Mrs. Fisher. But I need to talk about something important. Oh. Come in. I was just making breakfast anyway. After you two moved out. This place never felt like home anymore. Actually, Mrs. Fisher, I wanted to speak with you about Bob. I know this may seem unusual to you, but I met this man on my flight yesterday. And he looked exactly like Bob. Mrs. Fisher's eyes almost swelled up when Kristen mentioned that. And she noticed a weird anxiety in the woman's eyes. Is everything okay? Mrs. Fisher. You look. Kristen began. I have something to tell you. Kristen. Could you please go to my room and get the album from my bedside drawer? Mrs. Fisher asked. Kristen had no idea what was going on. But she did as Mrs. Fisher instructed when she returned. The older woman asked her to take a seat and showed her a photograph of twins. You see these babies? It's Bob and his twin brother. Kristen couldn't believe her ears. You know that Bobby didn't have a father. He left me when I got pregnant. Later, I found out that I was having twins. I gave birth to them. But I knew I couldn't bring up two sons. Even then, I was 19 years old. My parents were poor. And I was still a student. So, I decided that I would give up one child. I took their picture before leaving one of them at an orphanage. It wasn't an easy decision. But I didn't have a choice. Thank you. Let's continue. Julius willingly chose to become the father of a set of sextuplets that people despised. After a decade, the most unexpected truth about them came out. On the drive back to his home, Julius glanced into his rearview mirror. 4 of the girls were seated in the back of his pickup truck, while 2 of them sat in front with him. The 4 girls at the back weren't talking, and neither were the ones in front. The car was gravely silent, as if they were driving to a funeral instead of going to their new home. Their expressions weren't even joyful. They were just numb and neutral. It was the kind of expression that a person wears when they have experienced too many disappointments and don't bother raising their hopes anymore. Julius was coming from the orphanage, where he had signed all the papers and come into full guardianship of the sextuplets. They were his adopted daughters now. And he was their father. He liked to think of himself as a father without the adoptive prefix because he didn't intend to see them for even 1 second as separate from him. Julius was the kind of person who was all in or nothing. He had accepted these girls as his own. And he wasn't going to ever turn back on that decision. The sextuplets had been in the orphanage for 5 years. According to the caretakers at the orphanage, the girls had been orphaned when they were 4 years old and had lived in many different orphanages ever since. Their story was tragic and had been what compelled Julius to make the move of adopting them. To others, it might have seemed like an impulsive decision. But to Julius, it had felt so right. The sextuplets were 9 years old. All born together but having faced a harsh and shifting life early on. Despite their collective experience, each girl had her own unique personality and characteristics. A fact Julius was slowly discovering. His determination to provide a stable, loving home for them was unwavering, fueled by a deep sense of commitment to these children who had faced so much instability in their young lives. On the same day Julius met them, he found the sextuplets incredible. They were the first set of sextuplets he had ever encountered in his life. And he was certain they would probably be the only ones he'd ever meet. None of the girls looked exactly alike, but they all bore a strong resemblance to one another. And they were all incredibly beautiful. Even at their tender ages, Julius had initially found it odd that they hadn't been adopted earlier. This was before the caretakers shared the girls' tragic story with him. The girls had been moved around to different orphanages. The first orphanage that had taken them in had housed them for a year and a half, which had been the longest they had stayed in any single place during their stay in that first orphanage. The girls had been scared and had displayed signs of post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. They had to undergo child therapy for a few months before they started talking, playing freely, and relating to other children. Shortly after, many couples had shown interest in adopting the girls. It became apparent that none of them were prepared to adopt all 6 girls together. Instead, they had wanted to adopt 1 or 2 of the girls. The caretakers understood that taking in 6 girls would be a significant challenge for any family and had counted it as a blessing that the girls would be adopted at all. They had thought that perhaps if 4 couples adopted a girl or 2, all the girls would eventually find homes. However, the girls themselves had other plans. They refused to be separated. They wailed, cried, refused to eat, and kicked up a fuss whenever any of their sisters received an offer to be adopted. This happened numerous times, leading to frustration among their caretakers that in an attempt to find a solution, the caretakers decided to try another method. They approached couples who wanted children and suggested they test run living with the girls to see if they could handle adopting all 6 of them. The first family that the girls lived with ended disastrously. The wife grew to resent the girls after a few weeks, claiming that they stole her husband's affection from her. Consequently, the girls were sent back to the orphanage. The girls' experiences in the orphanage system continued to be harrowing. After being sent back from the second home, where they were unjustly accused of witchcraft, they were transferred to a third orphanage. This orphanage, like the previous ones, arranged for the girls to live with another couple. This couple was well regarded in their religious community, and it seemed initially like a hopeful situation. However, tragedy struck again. The couple lost some valuable jewelry and money they had been safeguarding. Rather than accepting responsibility for their own oversight, they wrongfully accused the girls of theft. The girls, only 7.5 years old at the time, were severely beaten as punishment. Traumatized and desperate, the girls banded together and devised a plan to escape. Remarkably, they managed to successfully run away and sought help from the police. This decision, made by children so young, underscored the severity of their plight and the deep bond they shared as sisters. Their unity in the face of such adversity was a testament to their resilience and determination to seek a better life. Free from mistreatment and false accusations, the police had taken the couple in for questioning, leading to further unsettling revelations. The woman was discovered to be engaged in an affair, while the man was embroiled in gambling activities. Consequently, the couple's reputation in their community was tarnished, with many people unjustly directing their scorn towards their daughters. The animosity towards the girls was so intense that they were moved to an orphanage in another state. This was their fourth orphanage. However, due to various issues, they soon found themselves at a fifth over time. The girls moved through several orphanages, eventually arriving at their ninth. By this point, the girls had become a burden to many, and there was a general desire to be rid of them. The orphanage director informed the girls that adoption was still a possibility, but they would have to be separated. Filled with sadness and fear at the prospect of separation, the girls looked at each other, realizing the gravity of their situation. Despite their efforts to stay together, they were unsuccessful and faced the heartbreaking reality of bidding each other farewell to end their moment of despair. Julius, a florist, entered the lives of the girls at the orphanage. The orphanage director had hired him to beautify the grounds with flowers in preparation for a visit by major sponsors. While working, Julius overheard the director telling the girls that they would soon have to part ways. Deeply moved by their plight, Julius felt compelled to act, approaching the director. He offered his large home as a sanctuary for all the girls. Despite the racial difference, with Julius being a black man and the girls white, he was undeterred. He was prepared to assume full responsibility for them. The orphanage management was immensely relieved at his proposal. To ensure his suitability as a guardian, they inquired about his background. Julius, a widower, lived with his mother in her 50s, and together they earned enough to support a larger family. Including the girls, the orphanage even proposed a monthly payment to Julius for the girls' upkeep. But he declined. He expressed his intention not just to shelter them temporarily but to fully adopt them as his daughters, committing to being their father. This decision was met with astonishment by many, as the girls were generally disliked. However, despite any reservations, the orphanage allowed Julius to proceed with the adoption. A few weeks later, the adoption proceedings were completed, and Julius's mother, Mildred, eagerly awaited the arrival of the girls at their home. She had a deep affection for children, and Julius had already shared the girls' story with her, sympathizing with their trials and tribulations, especially at their tender age of 9. She was ready to welcome them. To Mildred, the sextuplets were like long-lost grandchildren finally returning home. She was resolved to help raise them well. Mildred also had a personal reason for her joy over the adoption. For the past 5 years, Julius had been living a life marked by loneliness following his wife's death during childbirth. He hadn't dated or sought to build a new family, choosing instead to live with his mother in their 5-bedroom duplex on the city's outskirts. Julius cultivated the flowers for his business on this land and maintained a small garden from the day the girls arrived. Julius ensured all their basic and additional needs were met, following his mother's guidance. However, the girls remained reserved and quiet. They were polite, saying thank you when necessary and speaking only when spoken to, but no more than that. Their cautious behavior stemmed from past experiences. They had encountered many people who initially showed kindness, only for their attitudes to change later on, over time. Both Julius and Mildred were troubled by the girls' formal and uneasy demeanor but were at a loss on how to alter this dynamic. Despite this, they persisted in treating the girls with kindness, gently correcting them when necessary, and trying to engage them in conversations about their interests. Even though the responses were often repetitive and unenthusiastic, their perseverance eventually bore fruit. One day, one of the girls, Dew, was dusting the living room and accidentally shattered a cherished family heirloom, which Mildred held dear. Terrified, Dew braced herself for severe punishment, believing Mildred would react harshly and possibly even evict her and her sisters. However, Mildred's reaction was the opposite. Rushing into the room and seeing the broken heirloom. Her immediate concern was for Du's safety. She quickly asked if Du was hurt, needed a doctor, and carefully examined her for any injuries. Du was taken aback by Mildred's genuine concern for her well-being over the object, leading to an emotional breakthrough as she burst into tears. Mildred responded with a comforting embrace. Soothing her fears, this incident was a turning point for the girls. They began to see Julius and Mildred not just as caregivers, but as genuinely good people who truly cared about them. Gradually, the walls the girls had built around themselves started to come down, and they began to engage more openly with their new family. In the following months, the girls opened up more, and together, they all started to behave and feel like a real family. As time went by, the girls settled into life with Julius and Mildred, finding their own ways to contribute and enjoy their new family life. Some of the girls took to helping Mildred with household chores and in the kitchen, while others learned the art of gardening and flower cultivation from Julius. Their involvement allowed Julius to expand his flower garden, increasing both its beauty and productivity. The best part was the girls' genuine enthusiasm for these activities. They participated with joy, bringing warmth and happiness to Julius and Mildred. On one occasion, Mildred organized a bake sale for fun. Together with some of the girls, they baked a variety of treats that were quickly sold out, with many customers requesting more. The success of the sale was so remarkable that they even considered starting a baking business. Concurrently, Julius's floral business flourished, thanks to the increased number of flowers and the girls' help. With the business doing well, Julius frequently surprised the girls with thoughtful gifts, showing his appreciation for their contributions. 2 years after the girls had started living with him, Julius asked them if they wanted to do anything special. Unanimously, they expressed their desire to go on a camping trip. Eager to fulfill their wish, Julius hired a van and made all the necessary arrangements for a one-night camping trip. He planned it as a short excursion, thinking it would be best to return home quickly in case the girls didn't enjoy the experience. This careful consideration reflected his deep understanding and care for their well-being and comfort. On their family camping trip, an astonishing and delightful surprise awaited Julius and his mother Mildred when they gathered around the campfire. It was there that the sextuplets, each possessing a uniquely beautiful voice, sang together. Their voices blended and harmonized with such natural ease that it left Julius and Mildred in utter amazement. Until that moment, the extraordinary vocal talents of the girls had remained a hidden gem, unknown even to their closest family members. Upon their return from the trip, Mildred, profoundly moved by the girls' talent, took immediate action. She approached the choir leader at her church, passionately imploring her to take the girls under her wing and refine their natural gift. When the choir leader heard the sextuplets sing, she instantly recognized their potential and eagerly agreed. The girls, thrilled at the prospect of honing their skills under professional guidance, eagerly embarked on this new musical journey. Although they had always enjoyed singing together, shyness had previously held them back from showcasing their talent in front of Julius and Mildred, dedicated to their craft. The girls embarked on an intensive training schedule, practicing 4 times a week with the choir leader. This rigorous regimen continued for a year, during which their skills and confidence blossomed. Recognizing their progress, the choir leader began to book them for local events and festivals, providing them with valuable performance experience. Over time, the girls mastered a variety of musical styles, impressing Julius and Mildred with their versatility and growth. As they reached the age of 19, having just graduated from high school, the sextuplets faced pivotal decisions about their future. while 3 of them aspired to continue their education in college. The other 3 were drawn towards business and different personal pursuits. It was during this critical juncture that a talent hunt competition with a substantial prize was announced. Understanding the significance of this opportunity, the girls unanimously decided to enter the competition. They recognized that winning could provide the financial support needed for all of them to pursue their respective dreams. This decision marked a new chapter in their journey. One that held the promise of fulfilling both their individual and collective aspirations. This talent hunt competition was anticipated to be their final performance together for an extended period. The girls invested their whole heart and soul into preparing, choosing an a cappella arrangement for the event. They devoted countless hours to perfecting each part, ensuring every detail was just right. Their hard work paid off spectacularly. Their performance at the competition not only captivated the judges but also earned a standing ovation from the audience. Videos of their stunning act quickly spread across social media, catapulting them to viral fame. As a result, they triumphed in the competition and became overnight sensations amidst their newfound fame. A prominent record label came forward with an attractive record deal for the girls. They decided to take a few days to contemplate this significant offer. During this period of deliberation, an unexpected visitor arrived at their doorstep, a woman of elegant and sophisticated appearance. Julius, who answered the door, initially assumed she was another industry representative, perhaps for modeling or commercial deals. As such offers had been flooding in since their recent success, however, this woman, unlike the others, wasn't there for business propositions. She asked to meet the girls. And despite Julius's reluctance, something about her kind yet melancholic eyes urged him to let her in. It was a pivotal moment, especially considering the revelation that had come to light years after Julius had adopted the girls, gathered in the living room. The woman introduced herself as Ariel, the biological mother of the sextuplets. Her revelation elicited a collective gasp. Ariel then unfolded her life story to the family. She recounted how her parents, who were poor, uneducated, and naive, had married her off to a much older man in exchange for money. The man was initially overjoyed at her pregnancy, hoping for an heir. But his mood soured when complications arose due to the multiple births. Ariel had to be hospitalized for several weeks, a situation that angered her husband as he was burdened with the hospital bills. The girl's birth had been a complex one, necessitating a C-section a few weeks before the due date. In a generous gesture, the hospital celebrated their arrival by waiving the fees for the extended period the newborn spent in the incubator. However, this joyous event was overshadowed by the reaction of Ariel's husband. He was incensed not only because all 6 babies were girls, but also because medical advice prohibited him from trying for another child with Ariel for several years, as her body needed time to recover from the strenuous birth. His resentment towards Ariel grew, manifesting in increasingly poor treatment, a burden she bore solely for the well-being of her daughters. Tragically, when the girls were 3 years old, his behavior escalated into alcohol-induced violence. By the time they turned 4, Ariel, desperate to protect her daughters, made the heart-wrenching decision to leave them at an orphanage, falsely claiming they were orphans. Her primary concern was their safety and well-being, as she lacked the means to provide for them. Before parting, she implored her daughters to stay together and promised to return for them someday. For years, Ariel struggled to make ends meet, taking up menial jobs. Her life took a turn when she started working at a small bed and breakfast, where she gained the affection and trust of the owner, an elderly woman. Upon her passing, the owner bequeathed the establishment to Ariel. With determination and resilience, Ariel transformed the modest bed and breakfast into an exclusive resort, her success, however, was shadowed by the ongoing search for her daughters. They had vanished without a trace from the orphanage, leaving Ariel to comb through thin air for any sign of them. It was not until she saw a video of their performance at the talent competition that the pieces of the puzzle finally fell into place. Leading her to her long-lost children, the reunion was emotional, filled with sorrow for the hardships Ariel had endured, yet joyous in their reconnection. Ariel disclosed that their biological father had passed away, his life marred by alcoholism. Despite the past's shadows, the meeting marked a new chapter of healing and togetherness for the family. One day, Ariel expressed her gratitude to Julius and Mildred for the kindness they had shown towards her daughters. They engaged in a lengthy conversation, and she extended an invitation to them for a month-long stay at her resort, including both Mildred and Julius in the offer. Ariel had become a mother to sextuplets at the age of 19, which meant that now at 38, her daughters were 19 themselves. She had not remarried and was not in any relationship. Julius, at 43, was also single during their stay at the resort. An attraction blossomed between Ariel and Julius, something her daughters quickly picked up on. They began to playfully encourage a match between the two, leading to Ariel and Julius eventually acknowledging their feelings and beginning a relationship. Only a few months into dating, Julius proposed to Ariel, who joyfully accepted. The marriage resulted in Ariel moving in with Julius, her dream man, her 6 wonderful daughters, and her affectionate mother-in-law. What an engaging story. I hope you will enjoy it. Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to show your support by liking this video. We look forward to bringing you the next video.